Hey everybody, we got a great show planned for you today. From talking about local community involvement and also some high school related events that have been going on over at Concord, we're talking about a few great things that are happening here in the Michiana area. But first, let me introduce you to today's guest host, Mr. Andy Krause. Andy Krause, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Jordan. Always a pleasure. Jordan, I had you as a student. What year, Jordan,
do you remember how long ago it was?
Jordan was the class of 2017.
Oh boy. Oh man, nope.
No, what was it? 14.
You're not going to believe this, but I had you between 15 and 16 years ago.
Stop.
Can you believe that?
You've aged well.
You too. Like, look at your complexion. Like, I wish I had that complexion at whatever age you are.
Stop.
I don't know what age you are, but man, like, you look like you're 22.
I do ask students that, like, how old do you think I am? And then I tell them how long I've been teaching, and their math always fails them. So when they say like, oh, you're like, I was like, I've been teaching for 23 years. Kids will be like, oh, you're like 32. I was like, yes, I was a child prodigy. I started teaching at age 9. Like, dude, yeah, man, I'm 45. So wait, Jordan, you're like,
oh boy.
I did have, for the first time a couple years ago, I had a girl in class who on the first day of school, I said her name. She said, I got to tell you something. She said, you had my mom as a student.
No way.
And when that happened, that was like the reality check of
the reality that you're so old, you're teaching a second generation now?
I'm old. So anyway.
Now, does that say that you succeeded or failed as a teacher?
Well, the longevity.
It's about making an impact long term, isn't it?
That's right.
So what year did you start teaching at Concord?
Started in 2000.
In 2000? Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
So also, I got to say, we're here in our new Chevy store on the south side of South Bend. This is set to open here in the next couple of weeks.
I like it.
It's kind of cool. Like, it's a little bit of a mess right now. We've got people working around us. We've got people walking through and like yelling at us and telling us what to do, which is kind of cool.
It's starting to take shape. I like it.
Yeah,
I like what I see here.
It's going to be something. It's got color. It's got some desks. They're not in the right place, but it'll look good when it's all said and done.
Nice.
We'll have to have you out for the grand opening. So you started in 2000 at Concord. And have you always done U.S. history, government, and things like that?
I mean, I literally I went to Taylor University.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is that where you met Joel Gates? Was that Taylor?
Yes, Joel attended Taylor as well.
Which is one of our owners.
And Joel and I, we like knew of each other, but we weren't like, I wouldn't call us like friends at Taylor.
Sure.
But our wives both went to Taylor too.
Oh, sure.
And so making some connections there.
Yeah.
And
you would have had twins around the same time.
Yeah, like a week apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, super close.
Yes, we've had many life experience with the Gates family. We've shared many. Just where do we begin? That's a different podcast, man. Whatever that is.
That's the After Dark edition.
Whatever this is we're doing right now.
This is the professional version.
Yes.
Like the After Dark version's later.
So Taylor, I graduated in like May of 2000. Sure. I remember my professor called me up and was like, hey, I have a job interview for you. I'd never done a job interview before. And I was like, well, where is it? He's like, Elkhart, Indiana, Concord High School. I'm not from around here. I'm from Ohio.
I think Plain City, Ohio.
Yeah, Plain City, the pride of Jonathan Alder High School, class of 96.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Population of 2000, right?
Stop it, man. So my professor, he's like, hey, you should go up and interview. So he put me in touch with the principal, Mr. Staley, Rob Staley.
No kidding,
I remember
Staley at that time.
driving up from Upland, Indiana, a couple hours to Elkhart and literally going in for a job interview and thought it went pretty well.
Sure.
First one, never interviewed before. And very next day, Rob Staley called and offered me a job. And you blink and now it's been 23 years and I've been teaching at Concord ever since. So literally I started teaching U.S. history and I still teach U.S. history.
You haven't gone past that, right?
Nothing has changed. So it's the broken record 23 years later. Here I am.
Knock on glass, right?
Yeah.
So when you first started teaching, or even better, when you first started going to Taylor, did you know you were going to be a teacher at that time?
I mean, I knew I was going to be a teacher from not from the womb, but I had, a lot of teachers have someone along the way that impacted them. And when I was in junior high at Plain City Elementary School in junior high, I had a teacher, Mr. Fink was his name, Dave Fink. And he was my history teacher. And I already liked history, but he, as a 7th grader, just made it super engaging and super interesting to me. And I knew I wanted to be like Mr. Fink. And he coached golf, he coached basketball, he was a heck of a teacher, and I knew I wanted to be like him. And so I knew, and you know, a lot of kids change their majors and stuff when they go to school or college. Like I never changed, like social studies, education, like this is what I want to do. I think it's abnormal to have the same job for 23 years, but like I'll retire from Concord, like that'll be it. So unless something goes really bad on the podcast and I like end up getting a call that I lost my job because of something in the World Wide Web or something like that.
Something's going to get spun. Yeah. This is going to be on like Tumblr or Reddit.
One of those things, yeah.
Did you see what Krause did?
Some sort of MySpace, some sort of social media platform.
Yeah, so really the reason we invited you out here today was for a lot of things. One of the reasons was we wanted to feature local community leaders that are in the Michiana area. And I don't know if you know this, but you legitimately have a cult following of people like 32 and under right now. You realize that, right?
When you say cult, it makes it sound bad. Like, I don't know. What does that mean? You know, what is this you speak of?
We worship you like in U.S. history class. Like, you know that. 10B, U.S. history 10B. You had this.
Yes. All right.
Are you blushing right now?
No, I'm not. Okay,
but
so
you do
cult following, whatever that means.
So like, I'll define that for you. So there were so many people that you impacted, and I think it's because you did what Mr. Fink did for you. So there were people that I know that legitimately went to college to be a U.S. history teacher, to do the same thing that you did because they love you so much. It was your personality, the way you taught, the way you developed curriculum, the way you just loved in your students. So what do you think is like the separation there? Like what inspires you the most to keep doing that every day?
Yeah, that's really cool. I was thinking I could, when you throw that out there, I can think of some names of kids who I know have gone on into teaching, and it's kind of cool in my room, which is a hot mess. What do we call it? My classroom? Is that what we call it? My room. I've got a shoebox, and that shoebox is.
Okay, so now you're being serious.
Yeah,
right?
this is real.
Okay.
This is real. Like when I got my job, they're like, oh yeah, you need to be the freshman basketball coach, and I didn't realize that basketball in Indiana is a big deal.
Sort of a big
anyway,
deal, yeah.
like, oh, people actually go to games.
Especially
like
Concord
Ohio.
at the time.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's like 4,000 people here or whatever. Anyway, what am I talking about? Oh, basketball shoes. So I have my very first basketball shoes when I first started coaching. In that shoebox, I put like notes in, like mementos, like things I keep as a teacher.
No kidding.
And I can think of like letters that I've got in that box that are from kids that like are now teachers themselves that have gone into education, whatever, and they've written me letters and things like that. So that's really cool when it does kind of come full circle like that. Sure. And those are things that like I'll treasure and I'll keep for a long time. And I don't know, just inspiring kids to love school, to love learning. And history is a subject I teach, but I don't know. I always joke, like people say, like, what do you teach? And I'll like life. And at the end of the day,
even before we started rolling, that's what you said,
like
right?
That's what it is. Oh, we weren't recording that? You told me we were, man. Dang,
shoot.
That's in the broader scope of things. Like I'm teaching life, and I want kids to have a passion for school and learning and engaging with others and that sort of thing. So yeah, I teach history, but in the big picture of things, it's a lot bigger than that.
Yeah. Well, when you first started talking about the shoebox thing, that kind of sounded like a serial killer tendency, but then that actually turned into a sweet thing. So props to you.
Nice. I saw what you did there. You spun that. Yeah, that was a good spin.
I let you finish, which is a good thing.
Shoebox, yes.
So if you look back at those students that have written you letters and that have gone on and maybe even thanked you for that, like, is that what drives you to continue doing that every day? Like, what is the coolest part of that?
I mean, that's part of it. I mean, working with kids, like that's super fun for me. I mean, I joke, like it's funny, kids, the teaching profession can get some knocks, and kids will make comments like, teachers don't get paid very much or whatever. And I often joke with kids like, no, I actually get paid to do this. Like I get paid to do something that I love, that I enjoy. Yeah. Like this is like fun for me. And it didn't come easy. Like I can think back to my like early years teaching, like luckily we lived close to the school because I would spend a lot of time at the school, and we lived less than a mile away, and I would stay late and I would put in the extra time. And shoebox, I also have like this is weird, I've got all my lesson planners from 23 years of teaching, like where I document every single day what I do.
No kidding.
And maybe that's my OCD, my obsessive compulsive, whatever you want to call it, type A. But like, I think everything I do is like intentional, and like there's purpose and there's planning behind it. And I think that sometimes students can look at what happens in the classroom and see them like, oh, I'm just winging it, or like things are just kind of on the fly, but there's a purpose behind everything. And there's, as I always call it, like there's a game within the game that's going on.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I know what's happening and I see the bigger picture of what's unfolding. And it's now gotten to the point where it's not that I don't do any work, but it's gotten to be much more, I would say the last 5-6 years have just gotten to be really enjoyable for me to, even more so, just engage with kids, to take it deeper and to get kids to just really enjoy school and enjoy the process of just growing up and things like that. So,
Well, I mean, it's kind of cool when you do it for so long that you develop almost a science to it, so that it becomes routine in a good way, so that you can really focus on like the higher level quality thinking of it. So it's cool when you can do that. And I kid you not, I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here, but you were one of my favorite teachers in high school because of the fact that you actually made it fun and you made it interesting. And there were certain things you would say that like still stick with me today. So I'm going to edit this. I cannot say the exact statement. Here it goes, right? This is the part we're going to get fired now, right? So I'm going to leave out the blank parts because we cannot have an explicit podcast on Spotify. So
wait, explicit? Like I not.
So I'm going to leave 2 blanks in this statement. It went like this.
I don't even know where this is going. Some of the content has maybe been what was cool 20 years ago might not be cool like 20
so back in 07,
ago.
in 07 you could say this stuff, right?
07, yes.
So we were talking about the transition between JFK and LBJ.
Oh, no.
And here it comes, right? Do you know what I'm going to say?
I mean, I can sense where this might go.
Okay, so you were talking about the opposition that LBJ had while he was running. And the statement that you said that still sticks with me today was, hey, LBJ, how many blank are you going to blank today? Do you remember saying that?
Okay, so this is funny. Because
and it wasn't you saying it was other people saying it, right?
I can respond to this because this speaks to a trend in education. I was talking to my principal the other day, who love the guy.
Yeah.
We actually taught together for about a decade before he moved into administration. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Seth Molnar. So anyway,
he's back.
Exactly. He's back at Concord. Graduated from Concord like same age. We came in a couple years apart, taught social studies together.
Exactly.
And it was funny because we were talking the other day about the phenomenon of like the urban legend that kids you'll see in the community that you had in class like 10, 15 years ago will come back and they'll be like, dude, do you remember that one time you did? And he was, it was like we were talking, like kids will remember things and it's like, dude, that is not how it went down. But in that kid's mind, that's how they remember it.
That was reality
and you just kind of be like, yeah, I do. And like the urban legend grows. And as time goes on, like the story that develops is far from the truth. But that's what sticks with that kid. And that urban legend lives on. So what you were remembering, Jordan,
that really happened.
We'll give you, if I was a teacher, we'd give you partial credit. Right now.
Like, I showed my work.
So you complete sentences. The chronology was correct. John F. Kennedy to Lyndon B. Johnson. Okay, like we'll give you that. I
give the background.
What you're responding to is during the Vietnam era, when Lyndon B. Johnson was president, the Vietnam War proved to be unpopular.
Yes.
And so it was common that there would be protests. Many of them college-age students, much like yourself, as you've not aged at all. And they would
still in college.
They would say things like, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? Making reference to young men dying in Vietnam.
That's right.
So the urban legend has grown, and I don't know where this has gone now, but Dr. Molnar, you are correct. The memory of kids fades over time, and things that you never really did indeed take place in the mind of that student.
And that was reality for certain people, right? Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and close on this episode. And just in closing, what is one thing that you do with your students that you hope inspires them to love education, not only love the education they're getting today, but also loving continuing education? And I know that we joked about you not being on social media, you barely having a cell phone 5 years ago because you're so focused on continuing your education and reading books. You're like, do you know what a book is, Jordan?
I mean, I do. I feel like like I said, there's so many like goals and there's so many game within the game sort of concepts when it comes to teaching and that sort of thing. But on just that subject matter level, I kind of bristle at when people are like, oh, so you taught for 23 years, you teach the same stuff that you've taught 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Like, you just press rewind and do it all over again.
Yeah. That is the nice thing about U.S. history. It doesn't change very much.
See, there you go, man. And so if I was to do the same thing I did 23 years ago, I would probably be a little bored.
Sure.
And so I have tried to keep it fresh with myself. And I am a reader. I read books. Like, I keep track of books. I'm anal like that. Like last year, I think I read like 28 books. And so like I write them down, I keep track. And I really struggle to branch outside of anything non-history.
Sure.
So I'm always, I like to model, I think, to my students that, like, I'm still a learner. Like, there's still parts of history, and like, I've learned along the way. And so like, I'm always on the lookout for like that little tidbit, that little story, that little like hook that's going to like get kids interested. And, and I think part of history is storytelling. And I like pride myself in being able to tell the story of history well. And I think I'm always on the lookout for that next kind of cool story, or that next way to kind of hook kids into something.
Exactly.
And I always think, like, if I can, like, on the needle of like history, if I can move a kid a little bit closer along to like, oh, actually by the end of class, like, history's not too bad. You know, and I kind of like it. Like, that's a win for me. And that's something that I want to impart upon kids, just that love of learning, and like, I read and I model that, like, I'm learning, and like, can you like history a little bit more at the end than you did at the beginning? And that's something I kind of enjoy, is that game within the game. Along the way.
Well, that's inspirational when you can take something like that and make people's lives better. And I guess I said I had one more question for you, but I got one more now. Who really killed JFK? What's the answer? This is the only reason you came today. I want to know.
It wasn't LBJ? See, according to Jordan, the legend, he's like, oh, I think it was, although some people will say that LBJ had
set it up, right?
I always, you know, like,
Which theory is your favorite?
My theories over time have changed with that one. Like, the more I read, whatever, on that. I do have I do think Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone.
Okay.
But I think I've, over years, have like really pieced together the whole kind of mafia sort of connection, like an inside job sort of thing, as far as that goes. So I'll go with Oswald as the lone gunman with a mafia connection. Final answer for now. That might change. Check back with me on the next podcast. Never to happen again.
You only said yes to this once. You can't do it again, right? You're like, man, I'm not doing this ever again. I'm probably gonna get fired.
I mean, whatever. This is easy. This is easy. I mean, just talking.
That's right. Well, Mr. Krause, thank you for joining us today on Car Talk, presented by Gates Automotive. Everybody, stay tuned for our next episode where we talk about some other content that's happening here at our local community.
Car Talk is presented by Gates Automotive, Northern Indiana's premier local owned auto dealer, specializing in Toyota, Chevy, and pre-owned vehicle sales and service. Gates Automotive has locations in South Bend, Mishawaka, Granger, and Elkhart. For more information, visit gatesautomotive.com.